To efficiently and effectively locate and utilize useful research sources, it is essential to successfully identify illegitimate resources, adequately determine the usefulness of your sources, and then put your sources to good use by appropriately paraphrasing, quoting, and summarizing. I call these the 3 keys to success. Identifying illegitimate research sources. Determining if a source is relevant. And finally, effective use of your sources. Today, I will be taking you through actual research for a hypothetical research paper, from the beginning of your research until you are ready to sit down and write your paper. Your history instructor, Ms. Doe, has tasked the class with writing a paper comparing and contrasting the Articles of the Confederation and the United States Constitution. You may be wondering where to start. Some good places to begin your research are with your school's library, on Google Scholar, or looking for domain names in your search that end with .edu, .org, or .gov as just a few examples. Let's take a look at one of my favorite places to go for research, Google Scholar. Here is a search I did of the Articles of Confederation. As you can see, the highlighted article is called an analysis of 2 federal structures, the Articles of Confederation and the Constitution. That looks promising. We'll save that for the second key a little later. Another thing I really like about Google Scholar is, if you'll notice to the right of this particular article, it shows you the PDF file is from sandiego.edu. An educational site is going to contain legitimate and most of the time scholarly and peer-reviewed articles. That's pretty cool, huh? Let's pretend that we have conducted our research and identified some good legitimate sources for our paper. I like to create a folder, like the example I have here, in my favorites to save links to all the articles for the next key to successful research. Now that we have found and vetted some sources and determined that they are from legitimate sites and trustworthy authors, it's time for the second key to successful research, determining the usefulness of your sources. Check the date of publication. In most cases, it is important that the information you are using for your research is as up-to-date as possible. Check for bias. Is the article based mostly in facts, or does it contain opinions that might skew the results of your research in some way? And finally, is the information relevant to the paper you will be writing? We'll talk about this a little more in a moment. Remember this article from earlier? An analysis of 2 federal structures, the Articles of Confederation and the Constitution? Let's take a closer look, shall we? In this highlighted section from the article, we see a section titled Structural Similarities. Since we are writing a paper for our history course comparing and contrasting the Articles of Confederation and the Constitution, this would be relevant information to our research. And since we've already determined that it is from a legitimate website with a domain ending in .edu, and we found it on Google Scholar, we are going to send this source on to the final key to successful research. Now for the final key of successful research. Know when to quote them. There are 3 ways of using your research in your final paper. Quoting. This is a direct quote from the author that must be contained with quotation marks and cited as such. Paraphrasing. This is when you express the text in your own words. And finally, summarizing, which is a general summary of the text to show your interpretation of its meaning. When preparing your research, it's important to choose when to quote, paraphrase, or summarize in each section of your research paper. As a good rule of thumb, quotes should be used the least. It's important to convey that you understand what you are reading and writing, and your paper should consist more of paraphrasing and summarizing. So it's a good idea to save your direct quotes for those times when the author said it best. An example for our hypothetical research paper would be here with the preamble to the United States Constitution. I don't think anyone could have said it any better than our founding fathers when they gathered to pen this important document. So what about paraphrasing? What does that look like, you may ask? Here is an example of a paraphrased section from our source we found earlier. Can you spot the difference? Paraphrasing is simply rewording the original text. The original text conveys important information that we want to contain in our paper, but the meaning is the same in our paraphrase. We show that we understand its meaning without using a direct quote from the author. Of course, it's still important to cite where we got the information. Summarizing is the method most used in writing a research paper. Summarizing is necessary when you want to establish an overview of the topic, to cover the main points and key ideas of an article, and to show your understanding of the sources in your own words. Of course, it's still important to properly cite your sources of information for summaries as well. Locating and utilizing research sources can be a daunting task, but by using these 3 simple steps, identifying legitimate sources, determining the relevance of each of your sources, and deciding the best method to use in your paper, whether it be quoting, paraphrasing, or summarizing, you will be on your way to successfully writing a top-notch research paper. And finally, always remember to cite your sources. When in doubt, cite your sources. If it's not common knowledge, cite your sources. If you read it somewhere else, cite your sources. And good luck with your next research paper.